what are some examples that when you look at retirement income and you started getting into this and digging in and writing the books and doing what you do, what were the things that you started to see that were missing that you needed to adopt and you were going to tell people from a client standpoint that they needed to adopt?
Yeah, and we can start with some little things and move up from there. I mean,
Sure.
there's amazingly small things that have a big impact, which is just, did you think about, your Medicare? And I'm going through that with somebody right now, and just, making a better decision around Medicare, not just
Mm-hmm.
enrolling and trying to avoid premiums, but actually sitting down and running it and looking at what prescription drugs you have. And are
Mm-hmm.
those covered? And those are small things, but they can add up a lot. And in every area of retirement that exists too, right? Are you living in the right house? Or are you just living there because you've always lived there and it's way too big? It's got 6 bedrooms and it's tough to keep up and you're not even really happy there anymore. So thinking about your home equity and what are ways to leverage that or even spend it down at some point in your life, or is that your legacy asset? And those are, you would think that those are pretty basic conversations you should have. People weren't having them. The other one, long-term care, this is a really basic one. A lot of people are like, oh, well, my family will help or my kids will be my executor. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
always like, have you even asked them? Like, did you take the time to just ask your kids, do they want to be your executor? Do they want to help with your care? And the answer is probably yes. You're probably right if you're writing it down to assume it, but you ask the question and put them on notice and have that conversation. And those are little things, and all those things add up. And then what you see is, if people aren't living the retirement and not having the confidence that they otherwise would want. And end of day, I've shifted my mental thinking about retirement a lot on this. I used to be more of a, think about things in the X's and O's and the numbers.
Mm-hmm.
And, is it optimal? And you'll hear that on on the researcher side. And I've been a professor now for 15 years. And a lot of my fellow researchers talk about optimal retirement spend down strategies. And what I learned is most people don't care about optimal. And,
Right.
if you had a less optimal retirement, but they were happier, did you do your job? And I think the answer is probably yes. Like, if you told me I'd have no more money, but I'd be the happiest person alive for the rest of my life, I would
Right.
make that trade any second of the day, right? I mean, it's an easy one. So I think a lot of it gets back to how do we increase people's satisfaction, the return on sleep, ROS, which I like that terminology.
Return on sleep.
Yep.
Forget
Return on sleep.
ROI, it's ROS.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I
I
agree
mean,
with that.
yeah. Well, as I said, if you ask somebody, right, would you give up all the money and all the stuff you have if you were happy for the rest of your life? And I think most people's answer is yes, right? So that's really what we're aiming for, right? Dollars aren't really all that important in and of themselves. Is what do they allow us to accomplish and do, right? They're a means to an end. I mean, that's why, dollars and monetary things were created, not in and of themselves, but to accomplish other goals.
That answer is an easy answer for people. Yes, I'd love to be happy, but it's also a scary answer. It's also falling off a cliff a little bit for people because it takes them out of their comfort zone. How do you transition or help people transition from them nodding their head when you say, would you give it all up to live a better life, to finding that happy medium where they can meet you in the middle and go live that life?
This is a challenge for people heading into retirement. I'm gonna be very simple about this, and it's because of how we're, conditioned. It's how we're trained. It's how we're educated. So I talk about this, which in the book, but
Hmm.
I actually kind of learned some of this after I wrote the first edition of the book, which was just think about what we do during our working years, and you just have to stop sometime and put it down. And all we're taught is save. We're taught to put money aside. We're taught the budget, which is really usually a form of making sure that we're saving enough, right? That we're not
Hmm.
overspending. We're not taught to spend down assets until we get to retirement. And then I'd argue, right, we're not really taught it. We're not even conditioned. We're just told, hey, now's the time to spend down. So we spend our entire lives working 30 years, really just hoping the account goes up, right? We log into our
Yeah.
bank to make sure it went up. And that's really all we care about, right? There's been some studies from places internally. I think Wells Fargo said like 80 or 80 some percent of people only log in to their account to make sure the money is there. It's the only reason they log in. So you look at something like that, like that's what we're doing. We just want to see it go up. even return on investment, I know people might care at the end of the year, but throughout the year, we just want to make sure the money's not gone. And so we're taught our whole lives to look at this thing going up and to save and put money aside. And then one day we retire. Very few people phase into retirement. And now somehow we're just supposed to magically do something completely different than I did for the last 30 years. Honestly, it doesn't make any sense to believe that people are going to be good at that, right? If I tell you to do something for 30 years, you do it for 30 years, then the next day I say, well, now you need to do the opposite of that. What, you just told me to only learn one thing for 30 years.
Yeah, we teach accumulation, but at the
Yep.
end of the day, it's decumulation. Do you think we need a new word for that? I mean, the industry sometimes, the retirement industry, annuity industry, they start speaking in their own language, not in the consumer's language, which I try to speak in English out here with people. Decumulation means nothing to people. In
Yeah,
fact, it sounds bad.
yeah, most of the thing, right? Actually, even spend down,
Yes.
decumulation,
Yes.
they all have negative connotations. And I'm actually terrible at that. As I said, I'm an academic at heart and I fall into using and an attorney, right? So like we're the worst offenders of using our own lingo that means nothing to anyone else to make ourselves sound smarter. I don't even know if the term retirement is a great term either. If you look at that from an accounting definition, right, it means essentially that the useful life of the, object has passed.
Hey, Stan the Annuity Man here. Did you like that little taste of my podcast, Fun with Annuities? Hey, if you want to see the full version, click the link and watch the whole darn thing. Remember, Fun with Annuities. Living the reality, not the dream.